Chapter 15. Leaving Palm Springs. I settled the Bermuda Lodge accounts last night, and in the morning checked all the drawers, wardrobe, and bathroom cabinets. Before closing the door to leave, I looked at the bed and thought of all the events that happened in the last 14 days. They are a mystery to me. An extraordinary life force seems to be trying to create something new from inside. I felt a tremor in my chest. Sometimes, right in the middle of the chest, under the skin, a tremor would create a sensation and then stop. I came back to look at myself in the mirror. The point where the rib cage comes together in the middle of the chest, turning inwards, has become red. There is a sensation there. Perhaps I had scratched that spot at night unconsciously. I decided that I am not going to think anything further about all this. I deposited the key at the counter and came out of the lodge. It was still dark outside. I had crossed this desert piece of land every day for 2 weeks. Today, I will walk the path for the last time. I turned around in circles and took a good look at the sky, hills, and the lodge. Within a few minutes, I reached Yuji's unlocked door. I kept my suitcase outside, removed my shoes, and entered the room silently. Yuji was sitting on the sofa, his feet propped up on a table in front of him. I sat down on the carpet facing him on the other side of the table. He said, "I'm ready." I saw that his luggage was packed, and as soon as we wore our shoes, we could depart. We both were quiet. I looked at his face and smiled. I started the conversation. The last 2 weeks passed as if they were just a few moments. I felt a deep attraction all the time, a strange liking. There is an unknown intoxication with not even a bit of worry. I cannot understand anything, but still I have a desire. What desire? I feel like spending the rest of my life with you, Yuji. Oh, you are very sentimental. Like Telugus, even Bengali seem to be very emotional. I felt my emotions turning from laughter to tears. My chest seemed to be twisting with deep pain, and my throat felt choked. A hot burst of fire blew across my face. For once, I felt that if I could cry holding his feet, the pain in my chest would be relieved, that the heaviness in my heart would lighten a bit. My throat was constricted. I had difficulty breathing. Still, I took a couple of deep breaths and, trying to control myself, said with great difficulty, "I want to touch your feet and offer my pranams, Yuji." The minute my words reached his ears, his feet mechanically came down from the table. I got up and stood next to him. He too got up from the sofa and became busy trying to make his feet inaccessible to me. Soon we were both moving to all the 4 corners of the room in a most peculiar manner. This was a unique scene. While writing this, I am amused, but at that time, in my heightened emotional state, tears were continually flowing from my eyes. "What will you do staying with me? I am a nomad. I do not have a place to stay, nor sufficient money. You are a householder. You have a wife, daughters, and added to that, a valuable profession. We will chat like this. A small piece of floor will be enough for me to sleep, and I will study during the remaining time that I get. I am sure I was a baul. A baul is an itinerant singing monks from Bengal. I am sure I was a baul in one of my earlier lives. Right from my childhood, I used to run away from home. I used to spend the nights anywhere. Besides, a lot of my life has been spent in hunger without basic necessities. I had chosen such a difficult life for the freedom of my countrymen. Yuji took out a note from his pocket. He waved it around in the air and said, "This $20 bill is the only thing standing between me and starvation. This will not fill the stomach of more than one person in America. You go back home. Your welfare lies in that." Meanwhile, Mahesh entered the room and rescued Yuji from this uncomfortable situation. I thought to myself that maybe Yuji was feeling shy about all these matters and would not like to discuss it. I had no such problem being totally shameless about such things. I was in such a state at that time that I could have kissed Yuji's feet in front of a room full of people. I had core confidence in my mind that my search for spiritual fulfillment could be seen culminated in Yuji. Just like a traveler gets tired running after mirages in a desert, I was in a similar state. And Yuji was an oasis suddenly found in that desert. I could shout and tell the whole world that anyone who is interested in spirituality should at least once test this inexhaustible container of the source. But, of course, I cannot do all this because it would make Yuji uncomfortable. However, surprising me, Yuji told Mahesh, "This Bengali gentleman, though a scientist by profession, is very sentimental. He says he will stay with me from now on." Mahesh gazed into Yuji's eyes for a few moments and then said seriously, "I am well aware who is responsible for this." Thus ended the episode of our departure from Okatilla Lodge. Today, all are leaving Palm Springs and have gathered in the lounge of the Okatilla Lodge with their luggage. Julie will proceed to San Francisco to visit her mother, Ruth Hubley Thayer, who is living in an old folks' home. She is nearly 91 years old and is free from the burdens of the past. Even news of recent events raises no reaction in her. If you do not call this a disease, then she is free from disease. On her glowing round face can be found a sweet smile. No worries, no fears of the world touch her. Since Julie is her only daughter, apprehensions about her mother's security sometimes trouble her, even amidst her constant preoccupation with Yuji. She had discussed with me her ideas about how her mother should spend the rest of her life. Julie wanted to take care of her mom, but that would mean she would lose the companionship of Yuji. These dilemmas cause her worry. I understood this only too well. On one hand was her mother losing her memory, with Julie her only support. Her father was gone from the world long ago. And on the other hand was Avatar Yuji Krishnamurti, who had, in his limitless compassion, accepted her as a fellow traveler. In my mind, there was no solution to this dilemma. It was not possible for the three of them to stay together. Since Yuji did not want her to travel with him this time, Julie had decided to go to San Francisco to visit her mother. Yuji was going to Switzerland, accompanied by Mahesh. While Mahesh would return to his motherland, after a few days, Yuji would spend the entire summer in Switzerland. Before getting into the car, Yuji suddenly looked at Julie and said, "If you stay with me, everything will be destroyed. There is no good or bad about this. Before you play with fire, you should consider the possibility of getting completely burnt." Yuji's words could not be comprehended. I felt they were not new to Julie. Probably the same thought kept on expressing itself in different examples. However, the more Yuji tried to scare her, the more determined and aggressive Julie became, meaning she was getting ready to jump into the fire. Of course, the words that Yuji directed toward Julie may not always have been meant only for her. Much needed for many, but disliked truths could not be told to new friends. Yuji would select Julie as the medium to convey them. The responsibility of driving the car early in the morning was given to me. This was because Yuji said he had objection to sitting next to Julie, and it was a tradition for Yuji to sit next to the driver in the front seat. The rear seat today was occupied by Julie and Mahesh. The car was now traveling along the highway, passing rows of windmills. In an answer to Mahesh's question, my history of spiritual practices came up. I said, "At present, the president of Sri Ramachandra Mission is our guru, and he is addressed as master. His name is Parthasarathi Rajagopalachari. After my initiation in the mission, I began to have different kinds of spiritual experiences and became very enthusiastic about my meditation practice. The amusing thing was, the person often associated with my spiritual experiences was the late Sri Ramachandra of Shahjahanpur, Sri Parthasarathi's guru. This gentleman passed away quite some time ago." Yuji said, "I know of him. I have a French friend who was a disciple of this gentleman, Ramachandra." I replied, "I have read the literature of the mission and Parthasarathi-ji's diary so thoroughly that I am acquainted with the names of most national and international prominent preceptors." I eagerly asked Yuji the name of his friend, but he could not recollect it. I asked, "Was it Andre Poré?" Yuji was astounded. "How did you know?" I replied, "After the death of Sri Ramachandra, Andre Poré broke off all ties to the mission." Yuji was even more surprised and said, "I was just about to tell you that. In fact, Andre Poré introduced me to many people, and among them a German artist called Gottfried Meyer, who later became a close friend of mine." Yuji went on to talk about other friends in Bangalore who were associated with the mission. A friend who regularly came to meet Yuji was G.S. Mani, famous musician from the Karnataka Gharana. Gharana is a place where the musical ideology originated. G.S. Mani and some of his friends had developed an aversion for this guru, and all of them had cut off ties with the mission. I said, "I have read about G.S. Mani in Parthasarathi Rajagopalachari's diary. The truth is, now there is no amity between the two. They are like daggers drawn. The funny thing is, G.S. Mani's nephew is a very close friend of mine in New Jersey." Again, Yuji was really surprised. G.S. Mani, his son, and daughter-in-law just do not want to leave me. If I go to Madras or Bangalore, they are always around me. I laughingly told Yuji, "Sir, the world is very small now." Yuji smiled in a peculiar manner and said, "Yes, yes." The car was somewhere midway between Palm Springs and Los Angeles. In these few days, we have traveled on this road many times. Sitting in the back seat, Mahesh told Julie, "This gentleman learned driving quite late after coming to America, but he has such steady hands." Yuji said, "Do you think it was for nothing that I said that Guha will drive me from now on?" I think whenever Yuji finds an opportunity, he likes to torment Julie. Yuji again started discussing my future. I said, My social interaction outside my work is limited to the people belonging to my spiritual organization and to people who are eager to discuss such issues. Even my ticket to come here has been booked through a travel agent known to a member of the mission. Suddenly, I remembered an interesting incident which took place on the evening of my departure to Palm Springs. There was a young member of the mission who had just been accepted in college. He was an enthusiastic worker, very close to the master. Whenever he had some time, he would go to Madras to stay with him. He had arrived in our house in the evening. He used to address me as Sabya uncle. He said he wanted to speak to me privately. I said, "Let's stroll outside. It is so beautiful. We can talk while walking." He was utterly respectful of my opinions. First, we had a light discussion. Then he straightway asked me why I had recently become so neglectful of the mission's practices and satsangs. If I had a difference of opinion about the practices or the way mission functioned, why was I not contacting the president? He was agreeable to arrange for me to speak with Master. He also said, "I have heard you are going out of town for 2 weeks to spend some time alone. There is still time. If you wish, your ticket can be changed and you can stay with the Master. You can have a detailed and open discussion with him regarding the reasons for your sudden disinterest. This may benefit not only you, but us also. There are differences of opinions among our preceptors here. Some of them may have criticized the workings of others to you. Maybe your speaking out could solve these problems. The Master has always been in search of people like you, who have a deep enthusiasm for spiritual matters and an independent point of view." I was surprised to hear what he said all in one breath. I asked Yuji, "Do you know the answer that I gave him?" I told him that the working of the mission was not presently my headache. My matter was related to my thinking at the root level. I was not ready to express an opinion right now. The truth is that I have found a new subject on which I am personally conducting research. This is so important to me that I am not able to create space in my head for anything else. Yuji interrupted me and asked, "What is the subject of your latest research?" I looked into Yuji's eyes and said politely, "Sir, the matter is very personal. However, the results of the research will be published in due course of time." We all fell quiet. Although the speed limit was 65 miles an hour, the speedometer showed that the car was running at 90 miles an hour, and I could get a speeding ticket. But I'm desperate, uncaring. Curiosity seems to be whirling in my head. Where will life take me now? A tremendous excitement at the possibility of finding some invaluable gems in the depth of my consciousness would swamp me and bring me to a peak of emotional joy. I felt like hugging and caressing the person next to me or anyone who would come near me. Whenever the tremendous experiences of Palm Springs appeared in my memory, a strange sensation which I never experienced before caused my body to tremble from within. This episode of my search for spirituality was completely unknown to me. I wondered why these sudden waves of acausal happiness were flowing through my body and making me crazy. Suddenly, Yuji disrupted the silence and the pace of my thinking changed. He looked at me and said, "The actual thing is, you have to decide on reaching home how you would like to spend your life." Yuji's statement diverted my attention to another path. On the screen of my mind, a strange life story appeared. A gentleman, under the pressure of creating prosperity for the family and creating his own future, did not get the time to think of marriage. At last, due to pressure from family members and relatives, he agreed to get married. The bride was chosen. Everybody in the family liked her. The date was fixed, and shopping was being done. Everybody was happy. Everything was proceeding smoothly, though there was an apprehension in his mind that he was not too attracted towards the lady with whom he was to spend the rest of his life. In the midst of all this, he met another lady. Unknown to him, as per predetermined destiny, the intoxication of love entered his blood. The gentleman just could not help himself. Now what will he do? On one hand was social obligation, and on the other hand was love. I was laughing so hard that I nearly had to stop driving. The others were staring at me as if they had forgotten to close their jaws. I am sure they thought that Guha had gone crazy. I told them laughingly, I know what will happen now when I return home. All my friends from the mission will start pleading with me to meet the president. I will try to explain to them through arguments and logic that I no longer believe in meditation and prayer or even spirituality. They will not accept my contention. Whether they agree or not, all of them will want me to go and meet the master to have a discussion with him. I was thinking that I knew what the master would tell me. He would explain that to walk on this path of spirituality properly, one must become a model devotee and should maintain good habits and faith in oneself. To tell you the truth, I'm fed up of listening to and reading all these cliches. Not only that, all the roads have now been shown to me to be dead ends. I know clearly that it is no use meeting the master. If the goal is indescribable, unknown, and beyond thought, is it possible to have a way to reach it? There is no way. If I take a certain road, there has to be hope of something happening. That's why these kinds of thoughts are not entering into my head any longer. I can clearly envisage the effects of listening to the Guru's advice and doing work according to it. Therefore, I am not in the least interested in doing those works. Yuji asked, What are you thinking of doing now? I said, What I should do out of politeness is write a detailed letter to Parthasarathi Rajagopalachari to thank him. I would like to thank him for making me acquainted with one element of spirituality, and then I would like to end the letter by respectfully taking leave of him. He will surely understand that the need of the mission in my life is over. In reply, Yuji of course suggested the opposite. If I were you, which I'm not, I would choose to remain quiet. The reason is this. Suppose you decide to write a letter and send it off to your guru. If you think the matter ends there, you are sorely mistaken. In the next breath, you will find a reply from him. Either you will be asked to explain the reason for your sudden current state of mind, or you will be requested to meet him as soon as possible, or a subtle threat will be made of something unpleasant happening, and you will be gently ordered to meet him. You will become anxious and will be in the same state as you were in before you wrote that letter. You will have to start thinking about what you will do. Either you will write another letter and try to convince him through logic, or keep quiet and try to forget everything. In this context, let me tell you an amusing story. The story of Mahesh and his former guru, Rajneesh. Rajneesh and his closest disciples observed that many of the disciples had been disappearing. Rajneesh was worried. He had noticed an uncaring attitude among some of his disciples. At this time came the news that Mahesh had thrown the mala necklace given to him by Rajneesh himself into the toilet. The mala disappeared forever. Rajneesh was livid with anger. He knew that famous film star Vinod Khanna was a close friend of Mahesh. He called Vinod Khanna and told him, "If what I have heard is true, then Mahesh has acted as a coward and he will regret it deeply one day. If he did not like all this any longer, he should have met me and returned the necklace. You go and tell him I will destroy his life." Meanwhile, Mumbai's film director Vijay Anand, Devanand's brother, who was also Rajneesh's devotee and disciple, began to visit me. Within a few days, he decided that his days of conducting spiritual practices under the shelter of Rajneesh were over, that his days of meditation were finished. He wanted to end all relations with Rajneesh. He decided mentally not to behave like Mahesh and to return the necklace personally after explaining everything to Rajneesh. Just like I'm telling you today, I had explained to Vijay Anand also that all this had no meaning. This was the result of social pride. It was childish behavior in the context of what you were deeply committed to. Better to keep quiet and not to do any of these things. Vijay Anand did not take my advice and decided to return the necklace himself. The news had reached Rajneeshpuram that now Vijay Anand wanted to sever all connections with the ashram, but he would return the necklace himself and explain his reasons. Vijay Anand went to the ashram and sent word that he wanted to meet Rajneesh. No one in the ashram paid the slightest attention to him, including Rajneesh. In fact, he was not even given the opportunity to meet Rajneesh. Vijay Anand came back feeling insulted. Later he told me, "If I had listened to your words, I would not have been insulted in this manner." I said, "Actually, even though gurus may speak of unconditional love, if anybody leaves the ashram or rejects the guru's call, then, just like any ordinary lover, they burn inside. They get angry and curse the person. If I were in the place of Rajneesh, I would have said, 'Good, one more trouble gone, one less burden.'" After listening to this event, I decided to stay quiet and not take any steps. It seems it is written in the Bhagavad Gita, "Inaction is sometimes the greatest action." End of chapter 15.